What is going on, my Real Cinema Lemon Nation? Today we're going to be discussing future movies coming out in 2024, so if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on social media. All the links will be down below in the description, or at least my username will be. But let's get started. So to go ahead and pick it up from here, we have the first movie announced for next year, talking about Imaginary, a new Blumhouse production that just finished, and they released the trailer, and it looks honestly fantastic. I'm a huge fan of scary doll films, and it looks like that this film could be different compared to a lot of the other doll films that I have released over the past few years. Of course, one of my favorite ones being Dead Silence, which is actually a James Wan film, and that just being one of the OG scary doll films that I just absolutely loved. The trailer for this film looked fantastic, and I honestly highly suggest going and watching it and give this film some support because I think it's going to do really well in the theater, hopefully, because I know Blumhouse is notorious for coming out with movies that look like they should actually be good but end up not being, so we shall see. Coming up next, we have Smile 2. It looks like it can be an intriguing film, considering that the first film did fantastic in theaters. People loved it. It was scary. It was exciting. It was a different twist. It gave me a different perspective on what they can do with movies that involve possession and all that kind of stuff. And this kind of being one of those horror films where you walk in there and you're just like, it looks okay, but I'll give it a shot. Why not? And then you come out of the theater and you're just like, oh, okay, that was pretty damn good. Smile 2 has high expectations for what they are going to deliver for this project, and honestly, I really hope they bring back one of the other characters from the film itself. Kyle Gardner, who played the officer, basically, I guess the ex-boyfriend of the main character, he really showed something unique with his character, and I think that since he was kind of the one, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the movie yet, and I do apologize for that, but at the end of that film, he was the one that encountered the spirit and saw the main character die and kill herself, which means that it was passed on to him after, and so what's gonna happen to him afterward? Maybe they could start out the next film him knowing basically how to defeat this thing and stop it from killing him, which let's say he does actually know the secret to doing it. He does prevent it from killing him and he passes it on to somebody else because he is a cop after all. He can possibly hide that from all the other police officers in the surrounding area. This basically meaning that he can get away with murder and then he assists on the next person who encounters it, falls in love with that person or whatever, kind of like what they did in the previous film, and it helps her investigate a little bit further into how to get rid of this thing once and for all. Smile 2 is expected to be released in theaters later in October of 2024. Coming up next on the list is A Quiet Place 3. Now, I did enjoy the first two films. I thought the first one was way better than the second one for sure, but this one actually having a working title of Day One. But the idea of creating a world that is super fascinating with different creatures that we really haven't seen on the screen before, when The Quiet Place 1 came out, that was honestly a big change for the monster genre, and I really do believe that this is going to execute in a way where we actually get to see a different perspective on some different characters and kind of move away from that family a little bit, considering the fact that we left off on a good note that they did know how to defeat these things. Problem is that since we do know how to defeat these things with loud frequencies, this is an opportunity and create a new family in terror, or possibly continue the story within another country, which would be very interesting to see as well. So with Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn coming into A Quiet Place Day One, this is pretty fascinating to see two people who I honestly never thought would be in the same film together, to be honest, but this is actually going to be a huge impact on the new characters that they're going to be bringing into A Quiet Place. Moving into our next subject, we have Jordan Peele's untitled project. As of right now, it says on IMDb that is untitled. Now, finding this article on murphysmultiverse.com, we actually discovered that Jordan Peele is possibly going back to the world of Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. Doing a remake of this film would be very interesting to see. I've actually only seen this film once. It would be interesting to see Jordan Peele execute something that such an all-time favorite filmmaker was able to do way back in 1991. The original film was released in 1991 with Wes Craven as the director. It focused on a young resident named Poindexter Williams who lived in the LA ghetto. He breaks into a house and former landlord who evicted his family from their apartment. There they discover a dark secret that will put their lives on the line. Now, of course, Jordan Peele being one of my favorite filmmakers, being able to actually come aboard and make something super interesting and super unique, but also kind of take a turn on it. I love it when filmmakers go back to like the 90s or the 80s and remake films from that decade, because when you remake films that were literally made like less than a decade ago, It's like, why? Why are you actually putting that much effort into something that was already made perfectly and it actually shot up in a good way that actually made sense for everyone else? I'm really excited to see what Jordan Peele does with this film, and honestly, my expectations are pretty damn high for this one, so we shall see. Now, the last film on our list today is The Conjuring: Last Rites. The Conjuring 4 is in pre-production as of right now. No one is listed as the director, but we do have the 3 main cast listed on IMDb as of right now, as well as our writers for the film. Now, it would be really interesting to see Patrick Wilson actually step in to direct a Conjuring film, considering that he did a decent job on the Insidious Red Door film, and honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of that movie, but he did a pretty decent job for his directorial debut. Now, of course, James Wan possibly coming back to actually make this film. I hope that he actually steps into the director's chair again for a Conjuring film, because the very first Conjuring film is honestly what made me love the Conjuring universe. I think that's the same thing for everyone else, and I'm sure I can actually speak for everyone else at this point, saying that The Conjuring 1 was the best Conjuring film ever made, the best demonic and possession film that was ever created, and honestly, that being one of the most horrific stories to be told in cinema history, I do think James Wan has a good record and can continue the Conjuring series in a way that no one would expect. But guys, that is all the time we have for today. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And of course, I love you all, my Cinema Lemon Nation. Take care.